presentation, I will just introduce myself and the team, and then try and share the screen to show you a little presentation about ourselves. So I'm Leslie. I'm now the Autism Team coordinator. I've been in the Autism Team for probably about 6 years now, as advisory teacher for secondary schools. And our team has expanded, which is why we're now sort of in charge of ourselves and run ourselves as our own team, which is fantastic news. And I think means that we're going to go from strength to strength. Many of you will have known Ava Menzies, who was the primary school advisor. And I'm just going to show you Sue before we share the screen, because it's easier to see people before the screen's shared, really. So Sue is our new advisor, and she can say a little bit more when I show the slides, but she can just wave for now. That would be awesome. There's Sue. Melissa, I'd be very surprised if you didn't know, because Melissa has been around for a long time as our family advisor. And we're delighted that she's still around as our family advisor, because couldn't do without her. So it's good to have Melissa. And our team is expanding with our teaching assistants as well, specialist teaching assistants, who we have originally for a year, but hopefully we can keep them for a lot longer. So we have Kelly, who's going to wave. And again, I'll say a little bit more about them when we show the presentation. And Jilly, who hopes to join later, but we'll see, because she's also a fully trained ELSA, and she's got ELSA supervision this morning, which she needs to do to keep her ELSA qualification. So hopefully we'll see her just at the end. So I'll share the screen. This is a presentation that is actually for teaching professionals that I made just to show Senkos and so on what we do. So I'm not going to read it word for word, but it will give you a good flavour of who we are and what we do. It won't take too long to show it, probably about 5 minutes or so. And then afterwards, if you have any questions, then we can ask questions afterwards, if that seems sensible. So here we go. If I share the screen, can you all see West Berkshire's Autism Team? Yeah. So I'll go from beginning. Can you still see it? Yeah. And can you see if I change slides? Perfect. So the aim of the presentation is to explain who we are and what we do, and what we hope to do in the future. And I love this little quote, that normal is boring anyways. So this is who we are. Me, mainly the secondary schools advisor. Melissa, who you know, the family advisor. Sue, who we've just introduced you to, who's going to be mainly primary schools. But as a team, we want to be much more of a team. And although that I'm mainly secondary and Sue's mainly primary, it doesn't mean that we'll never swap and do the other, or we'll do joint work or any of that sort of thing. So we are very much a team where we will share our caseload and talk about cases together. And then we have Kelly, who you've just seen. And I will say a little bit more about them in a minute. So Sue, I've written some stuff about Sue here. But Sue, actually, as you're here, would you like to just explain this rather than me read it out? It'd be much more interesting.
Okay, well, it's lovely to meet you all. I don't know where to start now. So I guess I've come from the National Autistic Society, where I've worked for I have been working for about 8 years or 9 years. And I originally set up a family support project service for them in West Berkshire, which is actually how I got to know the West Berkshire team. So I've known this area for quite a long time. But I moved on from there to working in NAS schools, and that's where I've been for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. I've been there, one of their autism accreditation advisors, going out into mainstream schools and specialist schools who are looking for autism accreditation. And I've also been the advisor for all of NAS's own autism specialist schools. So for example, Thames Valley School, which you might know just down the road. So I've been doing that for many years, and have now happily come over to West Berkshire to work, as Leslie was saying, mostly in primary schools, but we're hoping to do, exactly as Leslie was saying, a lot more joined up work, lots of exciting projects going on. So all sorts of things I think come out of this team, which is really, really good. but I'm happy to answer any questions or anything.
And what Melissa, what Sue doesn't say is how qualified she is, and so many qualifications that she holds in autism, and the amount of research that she's done. So as well as practical experience in schools, her theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge are second to none. So we're very, very lucky to have her.
I have a little bit of an obsession about courses, so I tend to keep that quiet because I'm slightly ashamed of it. If I see a course coming up, I'm on it already. So,
and at very high level too. So we're very lucky to have that expertise. Now I've lost my little arrows at the bottom. So what do I do? It's not finding me. Oh, it's not letting me find. There we go. And somebody wants to come in. So yes, as I said, we've also got 2 specialist autism teaching assistants who have literally just started with us. We were lucky that Kelly started just before Christmas and Gilly started just after Christmas, actually. And the aim of them really to begin with is to pilot some specific projects in our schools to prove the impact of having teaching assistants. And we hope that we'll be able to prove that in order to keep them for longer, because we are convinced that having teaching assistants will be absolutely invaluable because they can do things that we can't. For example, we can go into schools and we can identify what some of the issues are. What we can't do at the moment, or haven't been able to do, is then to do some long-term interventions working with individual young people, because we have over 1,000 on our caseload, way over 1,000 on our caseload, that was between 2 advisory teachers plus Melissa. There's no way we could do long-term interventions. But with teaching assistants now, we can say, well, we think we need to do this, and we think this would be really helpful. And now we've got the staff to be able to work alongside school staff and actually put those interventions into practice, which we think is going to be absolutely awesome and will make a huge difference. So we're piloting some schemes in order to be able to, as I say, prove impact. And what we're hoping is that because we're working with schools, we're then empowering schools to have the knowledge to be able to carry on. As we pull backwards, schools will then have that knowledge to be able to carry on without us, and then we can roll on to other schools, so that in the course of time, all schools will be much more empowered and have a lot more knowledge to be able to support our young people. Sometimes we get asked about referral. I think most of you know how to get hold of us, but sometimes we do get questions. So how do we get into your service? We are free. We're one of the few free services left, actually, because most of the external professionals in schools are now what's called a traded service, a bought-in service to an extent, but we are still free, except for our centrally run training for schools. That there is a cost for, but everything else is free. The only thing that we have to insist on is that the pupil has a diagnosis of autism to access the service. Because as you can imagine, there are loads on the waiting list. There are other organisations that can support families while they are waiting, but we can only see those with a diagnosis because, as I said earlier, we have way over 1,000 on the caseload, and we just wouldn't have capacity otherwise. So that's one thing we do need to see is paperwork. How we get the paperwork, CAMS should automatically send it to us. That works most of the time, but not always. So as a parent, it's always helpful if you send it to us as well. And if it's a private diagnosis, it doesn't automatically come to us because they don't necessarily know who we are to send it to us. So if it's a private one, if you can let school know and let us know, that would be really helpful so we don't miss anybody. And it's the diagnosis paperwork that then triggers our involvement. That gets sent to us, we get logged onto our system, and that triggers a response from Melissa and then from Sue and myself in terms of schools. So that's how you get into the system in the first place. Melissa works with the whole age range. Sue works primarily with primary, we said, and I work mainly with secondary. If they attend a West Berkshire school, we will see them. So that means they could attend a West Berkshire school like the Downs and live in Oxfordshire, we would still see them. Or they could go to Little Heath and live in Reading and we would still see them. And equally, if they live in West Berkshire but go to a school just over the border, like say King Alfred's in Oxfordshire or Langtree, then again we would still see them. So this has slightly changed because at the moment Melissa is clearly not seeing anybody in their home due to pandemic conditions, and so how we support families is changing. But it's still there, and we're still supporting very much. So Melissa has changed that to phone calls at the moment. And of course, we still run many courses and workshops. Melissa, did you want to say anything a little bit about your courses?
Well, I think the most important thing to be aware of, knowing what courses that we run and also what else is being run locally, is to make sure that parents get onto our email updates list. Now that information gets sent out when a letter gets sent out introducing myself and the team. But I think the most important thing is to get onto our email updates list, and then we will send out our workshops, and we're always happy to send out other workshops that are happening in the area, like obviously the new West Berks support service. So that's the main way really to get on. And then shall I carry on?
Yeah, do.
And then we will be continuing at the moment to run the parent autism workshops post-diagnosis, and then we run several other workshops. At the moment, we run the sunshine showers, parent group works, but we're forever evolving. So we are looking at ways of changing these and improving these to sort of fit in with everybody else. So you'll see more news, up-to-date news, probably in the summer term about all of this. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then in terms of schools, we also offer a wide variety of training for schools. So central training is the one that we do charge for, and they're on a whole range of subjects like anxiety, behaviour, sensory. Next week, we've got, what was it later this week? Very soon, we've got one on girls and autism, executive functioning, social skills, all sorts of things. And then we do a 5-week course on keeping afloat, which is a very thorough course on autism that we offer schools as well. Alongside those, we also have 2 large transition evenings, normally at Shaw House, but this year they're going to be on Zoom. And one is transition from year 6 into 7, that's for parents. And the other, we started just a couple of years ago because options for those post-16, the landscape is changing and there are more and more options available post-16. And also, of course, there's now the requirement that young people stay in educational training until 18. So it's a little bit wider in terms of options now. So we open this up to the end of year 10. We do it sort of in the summer term for those in year 10, because in year 11, towards the beginning of year 11, that's when decisions need to be made for schools in particular. So we offer it towards the end of year 10 to give some processing time and some thinking time as to what young people might want to do. And they can come again in year 11 if they like. But this is open to young people and their parents. And what we have done in the past is, we've only done this for a couple of years, but we've had the parents in one room and the young people in another for part of the session, so that they can have some bespoke presentation time and Q&A time to ask what they need, which has worked really well, because when you're thinking post-16, these are now young adults, and the choices need to be choices that they are very, very much involved in. So this is why the young people come to that evening, and it is for them. This year we sent out packs instead because of the pandemic. We'll have to think about it this year. I suspect we'll be doing it over Zoom so that we do have some live input this year. We also offer bespoke training to schools that's free. So they can call us up and just say, we're really struggling with so-and-so. Can you give us some advice on what to do around emotional regulation or anxiety or whatever it is? And we can do bespoke training with all their teachers around a particular young person. Or we can do whole school inset, which we do quite frequently. We did one with one of our primary schools last week, and we think we had about 50 over 2 sessions because it was an infant school and a junior school. And it was excellent because it wasn't just the teachers that they invited, it was everybody. So we had lunchtime controllers, we had teaching assistants, we had play assistants, which was great because then they're getting a common message across all the staff. So that was excellent. We can also model and support small group work. So we often do social skills, girls groups, boys groups, mindfulness, all sorts of things. Obviously not at the moment because we're not in school. And I think it might be a while before we're able to do small group work. But as soon as conditions allow, we will be back in to do that. We also offer twice termly network meetings, autism network meetings, not to be confused with Senko meetings. These are slightly different to central training in that they're again free, as opposed to central training, which is paid, but they are very much a kind of solution focused approach. So we give a short presentation, and following that, we discuss issues in the school staff's own settings in order to find solutions and strategies, and so that the schools can support each other. So in primary school, we're currently looking at our provision and how that's going to work, and who we see and how we see them. But again, we aim to see every child post-diagnosis, and parents as well, ideally. Ongoing visits as required in terms of need and what that need is. And we will hold transition meetings for those with an EHCP in year 5 and for others in year 6. Again, this year, it might be slightly different and how we get around them, partly because Sue has got a massive backlog because Ava left at the end of the summer term and Sue didn't start until basically the end of the Christmas term. So we had a term without anybody in post. So as you can appreciate, that's a lot for Sue to sort of get through, because there's all the ones that Ava didn't see during lockdown, plus all the new referrals, plus all the ones that need transition support. So there's a lot to work through that Sue is diligently working through bit by bit, and we will get there. Again, I meet every young person post-diagnosis and parents if they like. I try to meet most of our year 7s. I haven't this year because I haven't been able to. But I do see all those who need me. We're doing a lot on Zoom, a lot on phone. In between, I see quite a lot of young people on a regular basis, because sometimes they just like to see somebody who isn't part of the school as that one step removed. And although I strongly encourage relationships with the school because they are there every day and I'm not, and that's really important, sometimes it's quite nice for them to be able to speak to somebody and get a different perspective. And I can help them stay on an even keel and hopefully to stay engaged in school. So some of them I'll know when they come in from year 7, and some of those now have gone off to uni and off to jobs, and I've seen them all the way through, which is lovely to see them come out and be successful adults and independent adults. We realise that for parents of secondary school age children, it's harder sometimes to have contact with each other. Through things like yourselves, you do connect with each other, but that's not necessarily in your school hubs. So we've started to set up coffee mornings for parents to send children in secondary schools over Zoom at the moment, so that parents can share what's working well and any concerns that they have as well. And we're looking in the future of setting up similar things for primary schools too. As a team, we also work with other professionals. And this is where we're quite fortunate, because we are the West Berks Autism Team with the authority. We do get to go into schools. We do have access to educational psychologists and social workers, emotional health academy, therapeutic thinking team, lots and lots of agencies that we can work with directly, which is really helpful. And in things like Team Around the Family, Team Around the Child. Melissa and Sue sit on the Autism Partnership Board as well. And we're also set up a multi-professional working party to investigate emotionally based school avoidance at the moment, because we've noticed that's a big issue and is going to be post-pandemic, I think, with transition back into schools. A bit more about our joint working. What we can't offer, we are not counsellors. So we can't offer counselling. We have some counselling skills, but we're not official counsellors. Melissa can dip in regularly with families, but can't offer intensive interventions due to time constraints. And we're not an emergency service, even though we'd like to be at times. So sometimes it can take a little while to respond to us. As you can see, we're not a big team, although we're almost twice the size that we were. And we have a very, very large caseload. So sometimes it does take us a little while to get back to you. But with our new teaching assistants, we are now able, as time goes on, to offer the intensive interventions that we would like. So that is fantastic news. Where next? It's all about embedding our new team. As you can see, we've got 3 new members of staff. And unfortunately, they haven't even met each other live yet. They started in the middle of a pandemic, and they've only ever seen each other from about the shoulders up. Because it's just, we've all been in pandemic, so don't even know whether they've got legs or what they look like, shoulders and below. I do, but the rest of them don't. So it'd be really nice to sort of meet up at some point. And we're exploring ways of working and how we visit and how we will work as a new team, and as I say, piloting projects. But it's a very, very exciting time for us. And we're so glad that we have this expanded team, and so grateful, because there is such a huge need out there. We love working with our young people, and it's just great that we can do this more than before, because it's what we want to do. So these are just a few testimonials, if you like, that came at the end of this summer term. This one about the One Show was a young person who actually did go onto the One Show in the summer through lockdown, actually, about his anxiety and how he was coping as a young autistic person with anxiety, and he did a great job. And you wouldn't have thought that was something he would have the confidence to do a couple of years ago. And it just shows with support how the confidence can really grow. Right, so I will stop sharing there. There we go. So that's just a little bit about us. And then you're welcome to ask any questions you like, or disagree with some of the things that we've said, or anything. We're here to take any questions.
So if you have a question, if you wouldn't mind sort of raising your hand, and either you can unmute yourself or I can unmute you, whichever way you'd like to do it. It's entirely up to you. Just that we know who wants to speak if you raise your hand, that's all it is.
Cool. It looks like Fiona's hand is up, but it can't be Fiona because you're there.
No, it would probably be my
It looked like Dawn.
Our chair, Dawn, yes. Yes, probably Dawn. I can't see Dawn at the moment.
Dawn, do you want to unmute and ask a question?
Yes, I can.
Yes, major tech issues here. Morning. Nice to see you, Leslie. Long time no see. Question for you.
Yeah.
To be perfectly, just making sure. You said a diagnosis of autism. I'm assuming, rightly or wrongly, that would include diagnoses of Asperger's as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's an interesting one, because technically speaking, and Sue can wade in with this one as well, a few years ago they changed the diagnostic criteria. So in the past you could be given a diagnosis of Asperger's, which is on the autism spectrum, so that's absolutely fine. A few years ago they changed the criteria, and it's just become an autism spectrum diagnosis, and they haven't subdivided anymore. They've kind of got rid, for good or for bad. I could talk for ages about the pros and cons of that, but that's what they've done. So essentially speaking, yes, Asperger's does. PDA is a bit more complicated, because West Berks as such doesn't recognise PDA on its own. But what we have seen in reports is that you will get a diagnosis of autism, and then a clinician may write something like has PDA tendencies or that kind of thing. So yeah, Asperger's does count, to keep it short.
Thank you.
Sue, did you want to add anything?
And my other question.
The only thing to add is that some diagnostic clinicians are still diagnosing Asperger's, but it'll slowly peter out, or it should do.
And my other question was, where do you sit with post-16 work with young people with autism and other bits? Sue knows where I'm going, but sort of the slightly older population just outside that 16.
So yeah, we do work with 16 to 18-year-olds. That's still part of our remit. If they live in West Berks or they go to a West Berks setting, it's slightly more complicated if they're not one of our sort of mainstream schools. But technically, if they do live in West Berks, then we can still be involved between 16 and 18. I don't do as much 16 to 18, simply because it's me that does the whole 11 to 18. And we have a lot 11 to 16. And so my time gets a little bit squeezed. So my emphasis on 16 to 18 isn't as much because it's just me. And I have to cover everybody. But we very much are still there for 16 to 18-year-olds, particularly around the transition time, because the idea is that if they make a really good transition between where they are pre-16 to post-16, then they won't need us, because they will have had that really good transition. And we hope that if they got their autism diagnosis earlier on, they would have had support from the team and others for quite a while, that they will have learned strategies, they will have learned ways of coping and managing, that by the time they get to that age, most of them are almost fully independent adults at that stage already. So yes, I'm very much involved 16 to 18 if they need me.
Can I just add to that? Obviously, if there's anything to regards with the home life, then I am also involved up to 18 years old, and we do get young people being diagnosed at 17 or even 18. But also I've had adults phone me, so we don't turn anybody away. We try to support them as much as we can initially, and then we will signpost them to other services, and if necessary, we'll try and get our adult services involved if needed. So we are there, but we'll just signpost them.
Thank you. I think we maybe, oh, Dawn, are you still there? Right, okay. Okay.
Sorry, I said yes, I am. I'm trying to get rid of my hand. I'm having a tech nightmare again.
It's okay, I've done it for you, Dawn.
Thank you.
Hello, Rebecca. Hi, I can see you have a question.
Sorry, I can't work out how to put my hand up.
It's fine, don't worry.
So our daughter Sophie is 10, she's in year 6. So our kind of major anxiety, she's got ASD and she's got special educational needs, but she doesn't have an EHCP. And so our anxiety is how to get her through the transition to going up to secondary school, really. And I know you've said that you've got some transition support. I think we found it quite difficult, like everybody, because she was diagnosed just before we went into lockdown, so we haven't really had any face-to-face contact with people, but we've been on some great courses. So yeah, it's just if there's any advice about how to transition and who to speak to, if anybody, that we need to do in this period. So
transition is something that year 6 parents and families always worry about, because that step up is a huge thing. I think coming at it the other side, working mainly in secondaries, it's very reassuring to see that the vast majority of the year 7s settle incredibly well. Secondary schools know that if they make a good transition, that's going to make the school life easier for the next 5 to 7 years. So they're invested in having a really good transition. And I have to say that the packages of transition are excellent in West Berks. They take it very, very seriously. So all those who are vulnerable, who have a diagnosis of autism or other diagnoses, or are just extra anxious about for one reason or another, without a pandemic would be getting extra visit days. They always have above and beyond the required 1 or 2 days. They're always offered extras. They're always offered the chance to sort of sit in on lessons, to come and visit until they feel comfortable, really. And last year, when there was a pandemic still, I was very impressed with some of the efforts that schools went to still try and do transition. It would have been very easy just to say, well, you can't come in, so we're just not doing anything. Lots of them made their own videos so that they could have a video tour of the school because they couldn't go in person. Some of them still had visits, but obviously they had to be limited in terms of numbers and bubbles and things like that, but could still go in. And the ones who were anxious still had visits. Just like schools are open for vulnerable and key workers, they still had visits. And we still held a transition evening over Zoom, as we will again this year. And Sue and I will be meeting with the year sixes that are needy and who need that reassurance. So I think the transition process will still work really well, regardless of a pandemic. Which school are you looking for?
We're just around the corner from Bart's, so I imagine she will go to Bart's. Yeah.
So one thing you can do is make a list of questions that you are concerned about, like, you know, where is a safe space to go? If they're feeling overwhelmed, what happens? Who are the people that I get in touch with? Who do I contact? Is it best to phone? Is it best to email? Make a list of them all.
Yeah.
And then ask them in plenty of time. The Senko at St Bart's is Mrs. Hale, Jo Hale, who's lovely, obviously under a lot of pressure at the moment, but she will get back to you. Okay. And she's the one that I would address concerns to in the first instance.
Okay, and we can do that now.
You can do that now. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Brilliant. Lovely.
Yeah.
Can I just add a bit more about the parent transition evening?
Yeah.
So obviously you get to know your school the beginning of March. It's usually about first week of March that you get your letters. Around that time also, you should get letters from us, from the team, or if you want to updates, email. Well, actually the letters come via the schools because we don't have obviously access to all parents' addresses. We'll also get emails from the team inviting you to the parent transitions evening, which off the top of my head, I can't remember the date, but it will be sort of April, May. It's usually just after the Easter holidays. And then part of that evening will give you a whole host of information and ideas of what you can do as families to work with a young person, you know, supporting them with any anxieties, lots of activities you can do with them. So you'll have all of that as well to look at, as well as what our school advisors will do and the schools will do with that transition. But if you're ever concerned, you know, always phone us and we're always happy to talk that through with you.
Lovely, thank you. We would just, our other anxiety is because she doesn't have an EHCP, how much support will she get at secondary school? Because in primary school, she, you know, she kind of works in a small group. She needs adult kind of support with her learning. And we're worried that once she goes, that, you know, I don't know what they provide at secondary school.
So part of the transition meeting will be making a note of all the support that she currently gets and then asking how the secondary school will be able to continue that. So how much of that will she still need? Has she grown out of some of it? What else might she need? And that will all be part of the transition process.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Can I just introduce Gilly, because Gilly's just joined. So if you remember at the beginning, we were talking about introducing the team, and we said that Gilly was on ELSA supervision this morning because we're very, very lucky that we now have our own ELSA on the team. And I haven't actually given Kelly a chance to talk either. So now we've got Gilly and Kelly together. Is it all right if we just sort of introduce our TAs? So Kelly's actually first on my screen. So Kelly, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone, good to meet you. So I'm Kelly, as Leslie says, I'm an autism specialist teaching assistant, and I'm also a qualified teacher. I've been teaching for 20 years or so. And I'm a relaxed kids practitioner as well. And I also have an autistic daughter, 10 years old she is. So.
Yeah, we're very lucky that we have both hats, parent and teacher. So very lucky. Jilly.
Good morning. Sorry I'm late arriving. Yes, I'm the other autism teaching assistant, new to the team, and I come from a primary school ASD resource, and I'm also ELSA trained, and that's where I've been this morning. So I apologise, it seemed me rude not turning up, but that's where I've been. And it's really nice to meet everybody and see you, everybody in boxes. It's nice to see you.
I was saying, Jilly, before you arrived, that as a team, we haven't actually all met, so we don't actually know whether you exist, shoulders and below.
I don't know.
No idea how
I just
tall
stop
you
here.
are.
we were saying that in ELSA actually. We were saying we've no idea how tall people are. They're just this big. Whenever, yeah.
One day we will find out.
Wonderful. Is there anybody else who would like to ask the team any questions?
Fiona, I just wanted to just quickly flick back to what Melissa just said about the letters. I didn't quite catch when you were talking with Rebecca's questions. You talked about the letters coming out around March. Who issues those letters, sorry? About transition.
So what happens is we write the letters to all parents who have a child in year 6 on the autism spectrum. We send those letters out to our schools, and we ask them then to pass those on to our families.
So it's your department.
Our department does that, yeah.
Brilliant. That answers my question brilliantly. Thanks, Melissa.
No worries.
Thank you.
Melissa, what happens if they're not in a school?
That was where I was going.
Okay, well, the transition's all about moving into mainstream school.
So if they were, say, year 6 in a private school, for example, or have been home educated, but wanted to move into a mainstream secondary.
Yeah, well, that's where it does become difficult, because really the only way we can sometimes offer support to all our families is if families are aware of us and engage with us. It goes back to we don't always get the CAMHS reports. You know, sometimes parents have private diagnosis, and we don't always, and they're not always aware. So sometimes, well, sadly, we do rely on word of mouth and people making parents aware of us as the autism team and engaging with us. So there are some people, sadly, who do fall through the net, who we don't always pick up. And I'm not sure what the answer is to that, because obviously we try to promote ourselves and get ourselves out there as much as possible. So we're open to ideas on how we can improve that. So if anyone's got any suggestions, we really welcome that.
Because I guess I was just going to say, our remit in schools is for mainstream schools. That is our remit. We are an advisory team for mainstream schools. Melissa will work, because she's a family worker, will work with any family. But in terms of schools, our remit is to work with mainstream schools. So I guess that's where.
I mean, the positive thing, because I've been around so long, is that most people sort of know my name. So I'm really lucky in the sense that, you know, our parents are really great, and they'll often say, have you been in contact with Melissa? And other organisations will do the same. And that CAMHS, you know, will say the same. And so we do sort of rely sometimes on word of mouth to pick up those parents whose children maybe are in private school or they're home educating. Like I said, it really is down to the parents if they want to engage with our service.
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to ask anything at all? Hello, Diane. Hi, would you like to unmute and ask your question? Are you okay with that? Would you like me to unmute you? Okay. I think you have to do it actually, Diane. There we go. Perfect.
Okay. Earlier on, there was mentioned Brookfield. Is that a school?
Brookfields.
Yes.
Brookfields is a school. I don't think we mentioned it.
Now, where it came up, Leslie, is Brookfields has the autism support service. So sometimes as a team, Leslie, Sue or myself will make a referral to the autism support service based at Brookfield School. They do have a reduced capacity, but we can sometimes make those referrals.
Where is that, Melissa? Is it?
Brookfield School is based in Tilehurst.
Oh, Tilehurst, right, okay. Thank you.
But you can only access that support service via a referral. So schools can make that direct referral, or sometimes I've made that referral, but it's mostly schools that will make that referral to that service.
Okay, thank you. And also earlier I was mentioned to be on the email update list. It's really on behalf of my daughter. If she's not on that, how do you get on that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure your daughter is on it,
Okay.
but to be able to get on it, it's just a case of dropping myself or any one of us in the team an email.
Okay.
We just need to get your permission because of obviously the new GDPR rules, and we'll get you on that.
That's great, thank you. And the other thing that was mentioned was the new thing, that's the new the West Berkshire Support Service. Could you tell me a little bit more about that, please?
Okay, so that probably is Jane, who's online, would be the best person to answer that question, because she's the person who's in charge and leading it. So I don't know if Jane's there.
Jane, would you like to have a word about your service?
Right, I managed to unmute. There you go. I feel like you need a gold star, don't you, when you've achieved that? Yeah, so the Berkshire West service, I know it's really confusing because we've got West Berkshire and then the NHS have the Berkshire West CCG. So, and because they're paying for the service, it's called the Berkshire West Autism and ADHD Support Service. So the idea was to try to bring a service together because there's a lot of overlap between autism and ADHD. And it's particularly to support parents who are waiting, because unfortunately there are long waits for an autism diagnosis. So we're offering courses. Some of the courses are very similar to what Melissa and Leslie and Sue will be offering, but you can access those courses as soon as you go on the waiting list with CAMS for a diagnosis. And also sometimes we get people contact us who ask us and say, well, school has sort of said, or my friend said my child might be autistic. Can I just talk to you about, is it worth asking for a diagnosis? What happens when they're diagnosed and what are the advantages to having a diagnosis? So we also have our benefits service where we help people, we fill the forms in to get disability living allowance or education, employment and support allowance, or PIP, personal independence payments. A lot of people think if they've had DLA for 10 years or so, then they'll automatically get PIP. They won't, they need to fill the form in properly. And those forms are really, they're very long and they're quite depressing to do. That's why we've now got Carrie, who's assisting Kevin, and she will actually do the whole form for families. And they will also do a mandatory reconsideration if you've been turned down or go to tribunal with you. And last year we recovered almost £250,000 for people. So I think that's not bad for 2 part-time staff, is it?
Yeah.
So did I answer your question? Sorry, I was trying so hard to unmute. If there's anything else, I mean, Fiona said she'll invite me along for a separate workshop when we can talk through things. We have pushed very hard to get sleep in there, and we also do a food refusal course because a lot of children have issues over the food they'll eat and sort of diet, and Julia is trained by the Birmingham Food Refusal Service, so she can give specialist advice in that area. I mean, the thing I would say is that not every part of Berkshire is as lucky to have such a fantastic team as we have here. You know, to have TAs that can go in and implement strategies with the school, to have a secondary advisor, to have a primary advisor, to have a family worker is just amazing, and that doesn't happen. If it was just West Berkshire, we wouldn't have been commissioned, but because we have to cover the whole of the CCG's area, that's why we're there. So thank you, ladies, for everything you do.
Thank you. And can I just say, Jane, that we have a note from Joan Maxwell Heron. I'm not sure if you've seen it. She said, I recently used your benefit service and attended a universal credit talk, which I found really useful. Thank you. Okay.
And if we have got any parents of, because I think, you know, it's a grim time with the economy, and there will be a lot of parents being made redundant. If they're having issues, I mean, if you've never done universal credit before and you've never applied for benefits before, it can be quite tough. If anybody that gets made redundant and they've got an autistic child or an ADHD child, do come and talk to us, and we'll help the family. I'm not just going to say it has to be the autistic person, because, as you know, autism is it's a thing that the whole family lives with.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you so much so far. Is there anybody else with any questions at all for?
I've been asked to ask a question. Bear with me. The person who's asked says, I do apologise, they may have missed it, but could you ask what happens if a child is primary and then going to secondary, that transition support?
Yeah, so we did talk quite a bit about transition support. So there will be the transition evening that will be held over Zoom that Melissa and I and probably other members of the team will be involved in, that all Year 6 parents will be invited to. Secondary schools offer all sorts in terms of transition, including extra visits as conditions allow at the moment, but we'll certainly be in touch. And Sue and myself will be arranging transition as needed. We'll look at the young person and think about what sort of support is going to be needed. If you're at all concerned, there's no reason why you can't drop an email to the SENCO of the school that you're looking to go to, outline the concerns that you have, and I'm sure they'll reply. They may not reply instantly at the moment. SENCOs are probably some of the busiest staff in schools at the moment, because obviously that's through pandemic, that's very, very difficult. But they will reply. And I think Sue was going to add something.
I was just going to say, it's also worth pointing out that just informally, as a child gets to sort of Year 4, 5 and 6, you know, just we'll be starting to look at those areas about how well are they going to just move on into secondary. Are there extra skills they need to start developing? How's this current support going to look in secondary? And just sort of informally looking at other extra skills to put in there, or do we need to try out new things? So just sort of informally and rather gently, we'll be starting to think about secondary before they hit that Year 5, Year 6 when actually transition evenings come in. So it's not going to be we don't do anything and then we get to Year 5, transition evening and off you go. It will be a very gradual process, and it's always in our heads moving forward, I think.
Thank you, Sue. Is there anybody else with any questions at all before we wrap the session up? Diane, hello.
Hi. I attended a Zoom meeting last week with Melissa, and I mentioned about the new strategy, you know, the new school unit, and evidently it's on hold for now because the lady that was looking after it's left. So do you have any more information about that at all, Fiona?
I'm so sorry, Diane. Could you repeat that question for me, please?
Yeah, you know, there's discussions that there might be a new school or a unit being built in the area. It's called the strategy. Melissa knows about it. And it was evidently put on hold because there was a lady called Jane Seymour looking after it.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, this is the strategy that Nikki Stevens was arranging, and the new SMNH school. So and at the moment, obviously Jane Seymour's taking that and running it. But I think things have obviously slowed down, and you probably know more than us whether or not Nikki's been replaced or not.
Yes, actually, Nikki has moved on to Reading, and Jane has. We had a meeting with Jane yesterday, and she has appointed Nikki's replacement. If you just bear with me, I can find out who that is. So we have a SEND strategy in West Berkshire, which is going on. We have lots of different topics which are running it currently at the moment. We can talk about that on another session, Diane, if you like. But yes, I'm just trying to find who Nikki's replacement is.
Karen Bartlett.
Ah, thank you, Dawn. Yes, so that is going on, I believe, but we haven't had an update about it recently, Diane. Jane is still obviously in charge of that project, so yes, as soon as we know more, we will let you know.
Right, thank you.
I missed the name. Who was the name? Oh, Karen Bartlett.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't know her start date at the moment, so that's the lady who will be taking over the SEND strategy as well.
It was presuming that it might have been started this September, so
yeah,
it's
don't know,
not even
Dawn.
definite that it will. I think it is one of the ideas in the SEND strategy,
it's a good strategy.
but I don't think there's any start date given.
Okay, thank you so much.
Essie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just a quick question. It's not really so much about your team, but I just if you know,
sorry, Essie, we can't hear you very well.
Is for, can't you?
No, could you come a little bit further to?
That helps or not? Is that better?
Slightly, yeah.
Any better now?
Perfect.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, it's not about the team as such, but I just wanted to know what the criteria is for the Trinity ASD unit. I keep asking different people, but they don't seem to know what, whether it's based on educational needs or behaviour needs, or how do they make their choice of who they will accept into the unit?
Okay, so you're talking about Trinity's autism unit.
I think yes, that's what Essie was saying.
Yeah. So the first criteria has to be that there is an EHCP. You cannot go to the unit without an EHCP. And I would assume, I'm not 100% sure, but I would assume that on the EHCP, autism would have to be named as the main need, because it's an autism unit. Then in discussion with people like myself and Sue, names get put forward to a panel, and there is a big meeting where we sit and discuss all those who have asked or to be considered for a place at Trinity. And at that meeting, we discuss who has the greatest need, basically. It can be a very, very difficult meeting because, as you can imagine, the units do not take very many young people, and there are always more young people than there are places, always. So that it can be quite difficult because some people are not going to get a place because they're just not big enough. So the criteria are that you need an EHCP, and then there's a panel meeting that discusses who gets allocated the places, basically.
Okay, thank you.
What age is that for, Leslie? What age of the children?
So we actually have several units now. So the Trinity one is secondary, but we also have 2 primary school units, one at Thiel Primary, and one at Furtree.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're coming up to our time finishing now. So thank you so much to everybody that's come along today, and thank you to the autism team from West Berkshire Council. I hope that you have had your questions answered, and if everybody is happy for me to do this, we would like to put the video up of this recording today on our YouTube channel, which is new to us, so it will be quite a new experience. If everybody would be happy to do that. If not, please do let me know. But obviously it would be really useful for other parent carers to be able to see this. So I do hope that you'll say yes. Again, everybody, please say thank you to the autism team. Thank you so much for coming along. It was really lovely to hear from you and to see what you do. So wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much. Thank
you can all unmute to say goodbye if you wish to.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Can I just say, if you have any more questions, you're more than happy to accept them via email, are you? Yeah, autism team, wonderful, lovely. All right, well, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for your time. Take care, and please do look at our YouTube video. I will be putting it up very soon. All right then, bye-bye. Thank you, bye-bye.
Can you send me the link, please?
Yes, of course I will, yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you just want the link to the YouTube channel? Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to sort of see it. And then I suddenly had a major panic. I hadn't turned my emails off at the beginning, and I noticed a couple of emails flash up, and I'm hoping they didn't come through, because they shouldn't have done, because it wasn't on sharing screen, so nothing should have popped up, but I could see them.
I didn't see anything. No.
You didn't see it, because I'm just, normally it wouldn't be an issue because it was there for like a millisecond, but if it's going on a YouTube channel, I wouldn't want anybody to sort of take a photo and see an email thing that popped up. But as far as you're concerned, you didn't see anything pop up?
No, it was just the comments being made on our chat, I believe, Leslie.
That's fine.
So I think that's what was showing. Yeah.
Phew.
All right. I never saw any emails or anything. No.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you very much for inviting us. It was.
It's a pleasure. Anytime at all. So yes, I'll speak to you again. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.